Um, Good morning again. I'm glad to join you for the next session. I'm Clovis Kabaseke, a lecturer at Mountains of the Moon University, and I've come for another session. I remember in the last session, we were talking about how agroecology is a science and it is a set of farming practices. It is also a movement. And the last session, we actually talked about how agroecology is a set of farming practices mainly. We didn't cover some of the other areas of it being a science and it being a movement. Even in this session, I will still continue discussing more about the farming practices. I remember in that last session, we talked about quite a number of farming practices like soil fertility management. We talked about the use of biorationals for pest and disease management. We talked about the use of light machinery to minimize pollution. We talked about diversification of variety, species, and enterprises. We talked about the 3 R's, the vertical gardening, water user efficiency, cottage industry, and shortening of market links. Those are quite diverse sets of farming practices, but right now in this session, I'm going to focus mostly about soil fertility management. What do I mean by soil fertility management? I do remember that at one time in one of the sessions we handled together, I emphasized the issue of soil health in agroecology. The soil must be healthy if agroecology is to take place. This means there are times when soil is not healthy. It means soil can die. Now, if you want to know that soil is healthy, it is something very simple. You don't have to go into the laboratory to understand that soil is healthy. You only need to get the soil, put it on your hand like this, or even if you didn't put it on your hand, you just look at it even when it is on the ground. If you don't see any life, any movement of living organisms in that soil, know that that soil is dead. If you see biodiversity, movement of insects, movements of organisms in that soil, if you see their earthworms, if you see their ants, if you see their different types of life, then know that that soil is alive. And for it to be healthy, it actually must be nutritionally balanced, and it should be having good moisture retention capacities. It should be having a very good structure, and it should be having a very good soil texture. That's when you say that soil is healthy. And this is principle number one, a very important thing in agroecology. The soil, which is the basis of all production, should actually be healthy. So when the soil is healthy enough, then it is fertile. When it is fertile, it means that it has got nutrients in the appropriate requirements for plant growth. It has very good water retention capacity, and it also has good texture and good structure. But to make the soil fertile, even to keep it healthy, there are certain practices that you must actually consider. Some of these practices are practices you may be knowing. For instance, according to agroecology, we advocate for composting. Composting, that is the making of compost manure, is very, very important in ensuring that the soil is healthy and the fertility is maintained. We also consider the making of green manure. Green manure can be made from living organisms, especially plants. If, for instance, you know plants like Tithonia. Tithonia is a very wonderful plant for green manure. You can also, you may have also seen that when farmers are clearing the land, they sometimes try to plow under some of the vegetation so that they cover it with soil, and that vegetation decays in the soil, causing green manure. And when you have to do this one, you have to make sure that you plow under the vegetation when it has not yet flowered or when it has not produced seed. And some of this vegetation that is plowed under, usually, we can give examples like Gazillisoga parviflora, Biden's pilosa, provided you can actually plow them under before they go into seed. I think you very well understand why you have to do it at that time. One of the reasons is at that time it is having a lot of nutrients which will actually decay and get incorporated in the soil. But again, you'll be avoiding to plant the weed seeds if you plowed them when they are already seeding. Crop rotation is another very important practice which actually maintains soil health. Agroforestry, that is actually the growing of trees together with crops and livestock, and poultry, that is agroforestry. It is practiced, and it's a very wonderful practice for agroecology if it is done very well. And this one makes the agroecology production systems very sustainable, very interesting, and they develop resilience. Another interesting practice that is very common in agroecology production systems is the conservation tillage. Manipulating the soil, agitating it and plowing it over and over again opens it to very many degrading factors. If you continue opening up the soil and exposing the soil, of course, a lot of nutrients can be lost through evapotranspiration. A lot of nutrients can be lost through leaching when it rains, and that may actually be very bad. So in agroecology, we encourage conservation tillage. Sometimes we call this one minimum tillage, and even sometimes we call it zero tillage. And when you do this one properly, you actually keep the soil healthy, it's not disturbed, and it can last much longer. In future sessions, we shall actually talk and discuss much about how conservation tillage could be actually done very well to optimize productivity of that soil. Mulching is another practice which is very good for soil fertility management. And with mulching, you know that you actually get some vegetation which is dry and you cover the soil. Actually, in agroecology, seeing bare soil is a sin, is something not to be tolerated at all. Never allow your soil to be made bare, because any moment your soil is naked, is bare, you know that it is depreciating at a very fast rate. So mulching is one of the things that actually can help us to keep our soils covered. Sometimes we can use cover crops, but it is important to understand that soil should never be left to be bare. Then to keep the soil fertility well, we have got fertilizers. Here I'm not talking about the chemical fertilizers. I'm talking about biofertilizers. Biofertilizers in agroecology are very important, and they can be easily obtained. Here you can actually use farmyard manure, for instance, cow dung or livestock dung, urine can all work as biofertilizers. You can actually even make green teas, green manure, which can also fertilize the soil. Another important thing that, another important practice for soil fertility management is soil testing and monitoring. It is always very good to monitor the way your soils are performing, because there are so many agents that can actually cause an imbalance in soil fertility. But it's good that you can actually take some soil samples in a good way, analyze the soil samples in the laboratory, and get to understand exactly which nutrients are there and which nutrients may be lacking. Let them be macro or micro. All of them are very important. Even when a micronutrient is lacking in the soil, it can have a very big ripple effect on the productivity. Intercropping is another very important practice in soil fertility management. By intercropping, you shall be discussing the best way of intercropping, so that you can perhaps use the heavy feeders with the light feeders. You can actually use crops with deep root system, and those which are having shallow roots. You can have heavy feeders with intercropped with nitrogen fixers. All these we shall discuss. They are very important for soil fertility management. Then we have got integrated pest management, IPM. Soil also gets some pests, and we need to understand how best these pests can be managed. And the integrated approach is recommended in agroecology. We shall also discuss that one in detail in the coming sessions. Lastly, water management in the soil. Soil water management is very important for managing the fertility of soil. So the practices for water management, which we shall definitely discuss in future sessions in detail, is very, very important. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to mark these things as extremely important. In this session, we have tried to specifically focus on soil fertility management, because soil fertility is the bedrock of agricultural production. If it is not maintained, then we are having everything in the wrong way. For that matter, these practices are important for you to ever remember. Composting is extremely important. Green manure is very important. Crop rotation is a very good practice in agroecology. Agroforestry, conservation tillage, mulching, the use of biofertilizers, soil testing and monitoring, intercropping, and integrated pest management, especially the soil pests and soil water management, are very, very key things, key practices that we shouldn't forget, and which are very critically needed in agroecology. I think for today, we shall actually stop here until we meet in another session, when we will try now to focus more on pest and disease management and try to tease it apart so that we understand it properly. Thank you very much. Hope to meet again.